see you. Please.
Good morning. My name is Glenda Torres, and I would like to thank Governor Murphy for inviting me here today to share a few words with you all. As a mother and a member of this community, I have seen firsthand the gun violence epidemic that is sweeping across our nation. October 10th, 2012 is a date for so many that was ordinary and a regular day. Unfortunately, for my family and I, is a date that we will never forget. I remember the look on my son Benjamin's face when he had been accepted to Mercer County Community College. He was excited and filled with joy. This was a start of a new beginning and a path forward. The path that we as parents only hope our kids will follow. As we cheer them on and watch them follow their dreams. For my son, his dream was to become a web designer. He loved video games and he loved graphic design. But his dreams were taken away from him on that unforgettable day in Trenton. It was around 8 p.m. My son was sitting on the porch of my parents' home when a car drove down Passaic Street, shooting, and he was struck with a bullet and killed. The pain I experienced that day is a pain I hope no other mother should have to overcome. Most days I look at my grandson Tykeer, who I know my son was striving to be the best example for, and I can only hope that he too does not fall victim to the violence in our communities. From the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary to the shooting that just took place this Tuesday, these tragedies are constant reminders of the day I lost my only son. But they also are constant reminders of something else, that we must continue to fight. We must fight to end gun violence. We must fight for educational and financial resources for minority children in our community. We must keep our community safe and give our children the opportunity to succeed. Working with Moms Demand Action and as the founder of Ben's Way, I search for new opportunities daily to educate the public on senseless gun violence and the dangers that are constantly lurking in our communities. I believe in the following. We must believe, educate, and nurture our children if we want them to succeed. Governor Murphy has been a vocal and critical advocate against gun violence and making important strategy changes to keep all New Jerseyans safe. I'm proud to stand here today before you and say enough is enough. We will stand together, united, and I look forward to standing with Governor Murphy as he continues his fight to keep our children safe and keep guns off our street. Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you again. Yeah, come on up and honored to have you guys here. That's a tough act to follow, as they say. Glenda, thank you for your incredible words and your courage and your husband. This is not the first time we've been together. In fact, I looked up, we were together last on November 2nd, 5 days before the election in Hackensack. And thank you for continuing to add your voice and your passion in memory of Benjamin and his little guy. I know I speak on behalf of all of us and more on my colleagues in a minute, but it's very good to be here at the Y, be back at the Y. This is an iconic institution in our country, but in our state in particular. The one here in Trenton is a beacon of hope in this community. So to our friends at the Y, I thank you for hosting us yet again. And again, Glenda, to you and all the other victims of senseless gun violence, we mourn with you, and we commit to ensuring that no other parent needs to live through that which you are living through. I want to thank the Attorney General Graywall for your leadership and commitment to the safety of the people of New Jersey. It's great to be with you again. It's a particular treat to have Senate President Steve Sweeney with us today. And he has led on this, and we've worked very closely and we'll expect to continue to. We also invited some of our legislative colleagues. Speaker of the General Assembly, Craig Coughlin's not here. Reed Bashir is here. Great to have you, Reed. Majority Leader Lou Greenwald wanted to be here. Majority Leader Senator Weinberg all send their regrets and wanted to make sure we said that they were with us today in spirit. We've got a whole cast of elected officials here in Mercer County and the great Trenton. So to each and every one of you, say thank you for being here today. It means a lot. And we've got a lot of organizations represented here today. You'd have to be literally blind not to see that Moms Demand Action is in the house. Maybe if you're red-green colorblind, you'd have a hard time seeing that, and I have a lot of friends who are, but great to have you here. Everytown Survivors are represented, Ceasefire NJ, Coalition for Peace Action, Million Mom March, Brady Campaign, a lot of organizations that do extraordinary work every single day. Today, by the way, I think it's a fair point. I'd defer to my colleague Stephen Govier here. We're not saying today that we can solve all of our ills with one step here. So this is a step in a long journey and a series of steps, I think it's fair to say. But today we are announcing that our administration will begin the process of rescinding the Christie administration's unilateral attempt to extend concealed carry beyond what our law already says. By the way, the legislature in both chambers have been extraordinarily aggressive, both in their legislative elected capacities, but also their leader and also their legal capacities. And so it's a particular treat that the Senate President, in that respect, was with us. My position has been clear and unambiguous. I think that's probably something we can say for a lot of us in this room. New Jersey cannot and must not become part of the race to the bottom that we're seeing across the country. There already are too many guns in our streets, and simply adding more into the equation will not make us or our communities any safer. This is about common sense. This is about our communities. And it's quite poignant and important in a community like Trenton in particular. This is about listening to the overwhelming majority of New Jerseyans who oppose looser laws on concealed carry in our state. Our police need every tool to remove illegal guns from our streets. And I intend, our administration intends to work with them to provide those resources. However, they do not need interference from the outside in this pursuit. It makes their job so much harder if they have to determine in a fraction of a second whether a person pulling a gun at a scene is a bad guy or not. Let me add that we continue to track the efforts of some in Congress to force a least common denominator national handgun carry law on us. Should this reciprocity bill somehow pass the Senate and be signed by President Trump, we will be right back here announcing our intention to explore every legal option to prevent Washington from endangering our communities. I'll speak for myself. I hope the cooler heads prevail in Washington and we do not have to take that step. And I will say we're only 10 days in, so far so good. We're only 10 days in.
But the Attorney General has already joined a group just to show that we're not going to stand by idly and punch under our weight as we have been. We've already joined a DACA like-minded group of 15 states in the District of Columbia in a legal pursuit, and we signed, and we just had a conference call with New York and Connecticut on this. We signed a common interest agreement with 2 other states to pursue the constitutionality or lack of constitutionality of the SALT state and local tax deduction. So not yet specific to guns, but we are watching what's going on in Congress and the administration very closely, and we will not hesitate to take action and join action else with others. Today we're going to begin making sure that common sense prevails in New Jersey. I'm honored to have these gentlemen with me. I think we're first going to go to the Attorney General and then the State Senate President. So thank you all for being here. Kabir?
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, everyone. I want to echo the Governor's sentiments to Ms. Torres, her family, and really all the families of victims of gun violence. Our condolences really are not enough, and our actions speak louder than anything we could say in condolence. So we're here today really to announce that we're beginning to take steps to make our state's handgun rules consistent with long-settled legal precedent. For over 20 years in this state, the law and rules for handgun carry permits were clear and they were consistent. Private citizens wishing to carry a handgun had to show a justifiable need. That's known as the justifiable need standard. In simple terms, they had to demonstrate an urgent necessity and a specific threat to their life to get a handgun carry permit. 2 New Jersey Supreme Court cases, one from 1971, another from 1990, expressly stated that generalized fears or concerns were not enough to meet this standard. Instead, the Supreme Court in this state on 2 occasions made absolutely clear that justifiable need meant, quote, specific threats or previous attacks demonstrating a special danger to the applicant's life that cannot be avoided by any other means. The prior administration, however, chose to ignore those precedents and amended the rules covering handgun carry permit applications to add language that said serious threats to the could be claimed as a rationale by private citizens in trying to meet that justifiable need standard. Not only was the inclusion of that serious threats expanded language legally challenged by the legislature as incorrect, it also has the potential to create confusion, legal confusion, among applicants who may mistakenly think that generalized fears are enough in this state to get a handgun carry permit, and that's simply not the case. Our legislature opposed this change, the governor does as well, and so do I. That's why this morning, in conjunction with the legislature and their counsel, we move for a stay in the case that's pending in the appellate division. We move for a stay, and we're going to go back and we're going to reopen the rulemaking process that led to that amendment during the last administration, and we're going to return the rule to what it was before that amendment. And that means urgent necessity and specific threats, not serious threats. So let there be no ambiguity. That's the process that just started, and we hope to make that happen in the months to come. Thank you.
I want to thank Governor Murphy for taking this stance and this position in the Attorney General, because the legislature vehemently opposed the change. This is New Jersey. It's not some state that thinks everyone should be carrying a gun, and if we're going to be safer if we do that. Yesterday, one of my assembly colleagues introduced a bill basically saying that we should permit more kids to carry guns in schools, because that'll fix the problem, right? It doesn't. You know, and I'm not someone that's anti-Second Amendment or anything else, but, you know, right's right and wrong's wrong. And people carrying handguns only can do one thing. Only one outcome can come from it, and you're not going to be safer. Bad's going to happen to the Torres family. I am so sorry for your loss. Today is just another day in a long journey. I am sure that it is never going to heal. But Governor Murphy, I want to thank you, the Attorney General. On behalf of the legislature, I'm here to say we agree.
Yep.
We absolutely agree. Concealed weapons don't belong in New Jersey. Thank you.
Well said. We'll take a few questions, We'll take a few questions. If you haven't read the Senate President's quotes based on this notion that your colleague had yesterday, it's worth the read. Trust me, it's for the ages. We'll take a couple of questions. Is that okay with folks? Please.
Quick question, a follow-up to yesterday. Any word about what you might do in the situation with the Highland Park, the Reformed Church of Highland Park and ICE?
Yeah, there's been a fair amount of activity. A lot of it has been in the Attorney General's, under his purview. Would you mind stepping in for a second, Gerbir, and talking a little bit about what you've been up to?
Sure. We took a number of steps yesterday in light of what happened at the Reformed Church in Highland Park. First and foremost, we reached out to John Sikoris, who's in charge of removal operations, expressed our displeasure with what took place yesterday, in particular where it took place. And we wrote a letter last night to the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirsten Nielsen, expressing our displeasure. They have clear guidelines that say that there are sensitive areas where they won't undertake enforcement actions. Putting aside the legitimacy or the legality of those actions, I'm talking about where they can take place. And those sensitive locations include schools, they include hospitals, and they include churches. Now, in this case, the actions took place in and around schools. Our letter to them, which we can make available or will be making available shortly, said that the rationale that applies to schools being sensitive places clearly must apply to the area around schools. Dropping off your children, picking them up from schools, student safety, all the attendant concerns of having law enforcement operations on schools should apply to the area around schools. And really, there's also the chilling effect on education that can take place if these actions take place in and around schools. In addition to that, we are working furiously on know your rights type materials for our citizens. So everyone is adequately informed of what their rights are in different situations, when removal operations might be taking place, or if they might be the subject of an ICE removal action. And so in addition to that, I think we've also talked to other stakeholders about trying to get representation. And I don't know if there are other specific questions, but generally that's what we've done.
I would just add, just briefly to that, if I could. We've been in touch with members of our federal delegation and their teams, so in particular both Senators Booker and Menendez. I met with the wives of the two gentlemen who were apprehended, and I met with the gentleman who somehow escaped. Also, we have to remind all of ourselves that they were escaping religious persecution. They are Christians who came from Indonesia. So they didn't necessarily come here for, they're not coming here for economic opportunity. They're coming because they're being basically marginalized and persecuted. And I think they all came in the late 1990s. So we have to keep that in mind. America used to be, and God willing will be again, the beacon and have our arms open to folks like that around the world. One other comment is we're trying to figure out the exact timing, but we've committed to establishing an Office of Immigrant Protection, a one point of contact location. There's lots of rumors in that church yesterday. There's lots of different stories. There's lots of concerns. Will they come into the church? God willing, they will not. And we still want to establish a single point of contact. My gut tells me we're still trying to figure out how to do that. We want to sit down with the legislative leadership. My gut tells me it's a multi-departmental collection because there's no one expertise that solves all the riddles here. Legal aid is certainly part of that. I know the Attorney General would support that point. So this is a work in process. It's not terribly pretty.
Governor, the assault deduction lawsuit that you in New York, Connecticut trying to file, I just want to get some nuts and bolts on that. Are you guys going to be seeking a TRO to pause the tax law? Where are you going to be filing it? And maybe you can perhaps elaborate on the legal argument why this is unconstitutional. I will speak for Mr. Sweeney and myself, two folks who are not lawyers up here, and defer to the guy who is. So I'll bring the Attorney General in.
Thank you. So to answer your questions, we entered into only 2 days ago what's called a common interest agreement with Connecticut. With New York and California. We've begun talks with Connecticut, and it's going to be a joint filing wherever that may take place. We're still trying to work out the ideal venue for that filing. As far as specific claims, whether it's going to be what the constitutional claims will be, what the relief sought will be, that's something that we have to work on together in concert with the Attorneys General of those states, and that's a process that just started with respect to New Jersey several days ago, and we'll need a little bit more time to shape that out.
Is that basically what you guys are trying to get at, though? Is that you're trying to put a stay?
Certainly injunctive relief will be part of the prayer for relief in that case, but as far as what the specific claims are, we're 2 days into a common interest agreement. We work fast, but that's a little bit too quick.
So I would just maybe add as a general frame on this, and the Senate President and we have spoken, that this can't stand. So we're pursuing all avenues. The constitutionality. I was just on a press call with Governor Cuomo and Governor Malloy, and Governor Cuomo read from statute from 1862, I believe, which talked about the primacy of the state and local tax deduction. So one avenue is to challenge the constitutionality, and I'm not a lawyer, but there's at least some fodder there. And remember that at least on one Friday night in November, I believe, 500 pages of amendments in this tax law went through, many handwritten, and I'm told, I don't know for sure, in the handwriting of lobbyists. So again, I'm not a lawyer. We're not lawyers, but my gut tells me if you do 500 pages at once with a lot of handwriting, there's flaws and openings. And then secondly, just to remember, there are other avenues. So New York has talked a lot about the payroll tax as an avenue. That's something that we're open to looking at. Again, we have to get huddle and figure out how we take that forward. We spoke a couple of weeks ago. We still believe there's precedent on the charitable deduction reality. 33 states have got some sort of precedent blessed by the IRS, typically not exclusively, related to a lot of red states, by the way, allowing folks to get a deduction on private school tuition. I think it's fair to say we're not sure it requires a state law yet. That's something we're trying to figure out, even for a community to take that step. But I say this because we're trying to exhaust, we're turning over every stone here.
Governor,
Please.
On guns, the legislature passed I think with overwhelming majorities, reduction in magazine cartridges from 15 to 10. Do you see that being fast-tracked anytime soon?
I'll defer to the president here, but we've got a common view. There's a whole series of laws that the Governor Christie had vetoed that we're prepared to sign.
Yeah, we're going to work on it.
Yeah, I think.
So is that, is that imminent, or is that going to wait?
Well, it's Charlie, we're not waiting for anything. And to be perfectly honest with you, listen, give the guy a chance. He's only been here 10 days. And the legislature never works really that quick. We have a host of initiatives that, a lot of people like to write things that, like, they focus on things we might not agree on rather than focusing on things we do agree on. There's going to be a lot of legislation. I voted for that bill, as you know. There's a lot of legislation that we're going to work on, from pay equity to, we can go on and on to minimum wage to a whole host of things that we're going to work on. So if we focus on what we agree on, which is 98% of the stuff, you're going to see a lot of things get done in this state.
We had a very good leadership meeting, I guess, 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And one of the comments that Steve said, or one of the folks there said, just start by looking at the list where there were overwhelming majorities and that were vetoed. And I think a lot of the gun actions are high on that list.
And Charlie, one thing, I just met with the speaker to get our list together so we can come see the administration and compare the lists, so we can start a program. And then you'll start to see it. Once the governor announces there's an agreement on a whole host of things, you'll start to see them move quickly.
Amen. Maybe one or two more, is that okay? Sir?
Since we're in Trenton, could you tell us how your administration is going to partner with the city to combat crime? Under Christie, there was the Tide Initiative, which was a surge of deployment of state troopers when there was upticks in crime. So I don't know if the AG could specify about what you guys' plans are.
I'll make a general comment, not necessarily specific to crime, but Trenton is on a very short list of communities. As it goes, so goes New Jersey. Right, so. And there may be others on this list, but Trenton, Camden, Newark, Patterson, Atlantic City would be on mine at least, and perhaps some more. And so I've said to the mayor since I met him almost 4 years ago, other cities have obvious partners, whether it's in commerce or in some form or fashion, nonprofits. The partner for the mayor of this great community has got to first and foremost be the governor, and I want to be that partner. As it relates to law enforcement, I'll defer to the Attorney General.
Sure. To answer your question, task forces, collaborative efforts, that's the solution. Anything, I think law enforcement issues today, whether it's violence, whether it's a heroin and opioid epidemic across the state, require collaborative responses, and that's a playbook that we used up in Bergen County, and that's a playbook I hope to implement here, partnering with local police, partnering with the state police, bringing together our resources with our federal partners to address violent crime, to address addiction, to address any community issues. That's one. The other thing is community policing. So it can't be all on the law enforcement side. It has to be getting involved in the communities that we're serving as well. So those are initiatives that we intend to implement in the months and years to come.
Maybe do one more quick one, is that okay, in the back?
I want to ask your view of the overall state of public safety in New Jersey right now. The Uniform Crime Report preliminary numbers for 2017 show crime down about 2 to 3% last year, violent crime down 10%, murders down 22%. So I know we're here for gun violence event, but what is the status of public safety?
I would just say a general comment or two, and then maybe defer to either of my colleagues up here to add anything they want. When you take the oath of office, the first point is the safety and security of every resident, and I say resident, regardless of their status in this state, is my number one responsibility. We take that very seriously. Secondly, there have been significant positive trends in a lot of communities. So it's a good start, but we have a long way to go. And I want to echo something the Attorney General said: community policing, being in the streets, walking in each other's shoes, invariably is a central element to success in keeping that trend going in the right direction. I'd ask either of you to jump in if you want to add to that.
Attorney General.
I don't have much to add to that. The numbers may be trending down, but we can't be complacent, and we have to redouble efforts in the communities where the problems exist and work in a collaborative way to solve violence issues, addiction issues, and to increase community policing, like the governor said.
I want to just reiterate thanks to Glenda, and God bless you and others, victims of senseless gun crimes here today, to all the organizations, not just moms, but you're obviously here in size, so you deserve a particular shout out, to the elected officials, community activists, to the Senate President. I'm really happy he's with us and is so invested in this as we are, and the Attorney General. Thank you all for coming out.